Hi everyone, and welcome to B007 Movie Reviews. We're here to have a chat about World War Z, the brand new action thriller zombie movie from Brad Pitt. I'm super excited about this film. It's based on one of my favorite recent novels by Max Brooks, who, for all you movie geeks, you'll know that he's the son of Mel Brooks, the guy who brought us all those gonzo comedies from the 60s and 70s, including, most famously, The Producers. But this movie is totally deadly serious. It's a much different tone. It's about a zombie apocalypse, but not told with any of that kind of kitschy, George Romero type sort of craziness. This is, by contrast, a movie that's gritty and real and almost wants to have a documentary type realism about exactly what would happen in the modern world, given modern politics, if a zombie invasion were to occur. So I love the ambition of this project. It's global sweep. We're looking at what happens in the Far East when the zombie virus first appears, and the reaction in America, which is a little bit more complacent and isolationist. But what the filmmakers have decided to do here is something altogether more personal than the book. So they focus very much on one particular man and his family. And that man is a guy called Jerry, played by Brad Pitt. Now, Jerry, as it turns out, used to be some kind of UN special investigator / commando. So he obviously has some crazy survival skills. And, given that the UN / US Army has his family holed up, has a big incentive to save them and not to compromise their position aboard a boat that he is very strongly told only contains people who are essential to the war effort. So you start to see that brutal reality of this new world. If you aren't going to help solve this problem, you're basically going to be one of the refugees that we leave out to die for the zombies. So the stakes are high, both personally and professionally. He needs to do this because he wants to get back to his family, and he needs to do it because he wants to save the world from annihilation. So as the movie opens, we get one of the most exceptional opening 20 minutes of any summer blockbuster that I've ever seen. It's basically the story of the family, Brad Pitt and his kids and his wife in a car in Philadelphia as the panic sets in, the Great Panic, and how they have to flee for their lives and hole up and then try and just get out the city as everyone else is trying to do the same. It's tense, it's emotionally wrought. There's this real sense of peril and yet an epic sweep as you see helicopters in the sky and people clambering over cars and looting supermarkets. It's just absolutely tremendous. We then move into the first of the set pieces as Brad Pitt's character goes to investigate what's happening with the zombies, which takes us to South Korea. And again, some of the aerial footage of them flying through the world and seeing the devastation the zombies are causing below is just stunning. But the bit of this movie that really took my breath away was the second act, which is set in Jerusalem. And this movie posits a world in which the Israelis have really gotten out in front of this crisis. They're so used to being under attack that they reacted early and with great intelligence. And he goes to Jerusalem, Brad Pitt's character, to try and get some answers. And we see this wonderful historic walled city just transformed really into a quarantine camp. And it's just stunning. And I also love Max Brooks' provocation in here, that under such a political stress, that the Israelis would start, withdrawing from the occupied territories, but letting in the Palestinians to their quarantine, that somehow in the midst of this craziness, these old kind of very entrenched divisions would start to fall as humanity comes together to save itself. So without being all kind of like slushy and touchy-feely, there's a lot of really good provocative political stuff in there. Once we finish with the Jerusalem bit, we get this very bizarre tonal jump though. And this is the first main criticism that people tend to have of the movie, that about 2/3 of the way in, we shift to Wales. The charge that's been brought to bear against this film, mostly by British, or I should say English filmmakers, is that it seems kind of absurd to go from eastern seaboard wreckage to South Korea to Jerusalem and then end up in this kind of like middle of, countryside Wales. But there you have it. That's where the movie finishes. And it finishes rather than with the sort of epic battles that fill the first part of this movie, it ends with a kind of quiet, intimate, tense thriller that's very out of keeping with the first two parts of the movie. But the bizarre thing is that it's equally well done. It's beautifully shot, it's very tense, it's well acted, it's beautifully choreographed, and it really, really works. I mean, it just has you on the edge of your seat. So I think if you can somehow kind of get over that tonal jump that comes 2/3 of the way through the movie and just take the movie for what it is, then you'll be absolutely fine. And for those of you wondering why that tonal jump happens, it's not really a sort of a misdirection. It's because the screenwriter, changed. So basically, this movie went through a lot of rewrites. It was a very troubled production. The budgets got out of hand. People were confused as to whether they wanted to make it a big budget action movie or whether they were trying to keep it more intimate, much more about one man and his mission for his family. And so a new screenwriter was brought in. That's Damon Lindelof. So some of you might know him from working on Lost and also on Prometheus. So he's crafted this very quiet, mature, tense ending. Like I say, I think it works, but you have to be willing to cross that jump. So overall, I really had a good time with this movie. I think it's intelligent and it really works. But, you know, I also love the books. And the other major criticism people throw at this film is that it is too different from the original book. And that is certainly true. The original book, which I really encourage you to read, works like a mosaic. It's a faux documentary book, which goes back to interview people who were involved in a zombie war. And it works together to give you this amazing collage of voices from around the world at different levels of professionalism. And it's so rich and it's so convincing and realistic. And definitely I feel the filmmakers could have tried to replicate that. They could have created a faux documentary, a kind of Errol Morris style film where they had sort of found footage from the different points of view and talking heads describing what was happening after the fact. But you know what? They've chosen to personalize this movie, and that's also fine. It's a valid choice. And I think that if you allow them that choice, then they do a good job with it. And the beautiful part about that is that it really does leave it open for future filmmakers and maybe TV makers to create some kind of mini-series which is much closer to the books and follows that kind of POV sort of format. So the way I think you reconcile loving both the book and, as I do, loving this film is to say that this film is the story of Brad Pitt's character Jerry, and that can be seen as one of the many POVs that occur in the book. So there you have it. I think this is a great movie. I strongly urge you to check it out. There's also a fantastic audiobook that's out there. I think it was released in 2007. It has voice cast that includes Mark Hamill, aka Luke Skywalker, Simon Pegg from the Shaun of the Dead series, and lots of other very, very fine voice artists. It's won a bunch of awards. It's abridged. I think they cut it down to about 6 hours, and that's definitely worth checking out. But anyway, in whichever format you choose to consume your World War Z, I strongly urge you to check it out. And I also thank you for listening today and hope to catch up with you again soon. So thank you very much.
1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn.